open the door before you get out. We'll get behind you. The two men in the front car will walk in front of you. We'll all go in the building together. Stay between the four of us and do not look back, no matter what happens. Don't look back at the crowd.
I'm late for a medical conference. But hey, what's going on here?
Says you cannot enter.
Thank you, sir. The President of the United States says that I can.
Okay, so we will be presenting on Chapter 7 today. It's over diversity. I'm Madison Lynn. This is Mariah Shepard. Libby Story is in the back, as well as Kim Billy and Kelsey Jones. Diversity is important because no matter where you go or what you do, whether it's in your career, the academic arena, or even in athletics, you're going to meet people who have different worldviews, different genders, different beliefs in you, and it's important to know how to interact with those people to be able to, pursue a common goal. So the objective of this chapter is to enhance your ability to work with people whose backgrounds and experiences are different from yours, through presenting things that prevent diversity from taking place, and as well as things that encourage diversity from happening. So first we're going to start by defining a couple of key terms. The first is prejudice, which is prejudging, making a judgment in advance of due examination. An example of this would be stereotypes, fixed images that are applied to fixed images of a group that are applied to all of its members. So, for example, you have one Asian person that, there's a stereotype that all Asian people are smart. And so the stereotype applies to every single Asian, and there are some Asians that aren't necessarily doctors or dentists and things like that. The book presents an interesting insight on stereotypes that through social work programs, training programs, and even other training programs like police training programs, the descriptive information that's presented implicitly creates stereotypes. For example, if we were to show you this picture and describe it to you, ultimately the next time you see this picture, you're going to see an old lady as well as the young lady turning her head to the other direction. And even if you don't see that the next time, you're automatically going to know it's there, and you're going to assume that's what the picture is. And oftentimes it's hard to change the definition once it's already given to you. So that's one of the problems with giving extremely descriptive information. One of the next definitions that the book describes is discrimination, which is taking action against people because they belong to a category, and it's derived from prejudice attitudes. So the book cites a sociologist named Robert K. Merton, who gives 4 types of discriminatory people. The first is an unprejudiced non-discriminator who doesn't discriminate and is not prejudiced. He accepts the creed of equal opportunity, and their conduct conforms to that creed. The next is the unprejudiced discriminator who is not personally prejudiced, but discriminates because it can create some kind of advantage for them. So an example of that would be, for example, in an all-white neighborhood, if a black family moves in, the family may move out not because of the black family, they're not prejudiced against the black family, but because of their fear of declining house values. And the next is prejudice non-discriminatory, which is that person is hostile toward other groups, but refrain from discrimination primarily because they fear sanctions or being labeled as racist. So this is the kind of discrimination that happens behind closed doors. And then prejudice discriminators are people that do not believe in the values of freedom and equality, and consistently discriminates against other groups, and both word and deed. So these are individuals that are blatantly just discriminated, and you can see that through their behavior. So the book also gives two other types of discrimination. The first is de jure, which means concerning law, and it's legal discrimination. For example, like you saw in the clip that we showed before we began, it's like some of the Jim Crow laws and segregation that were legal in the United States past history. And then there's de facto discrimination, which is discrimination that actually exists legally or illegally. So this could be like the separate but equal. So, they passed it to where discrimination was not legal, but they still had the separate but equal thing. So, and then another form of discrimination is oppression, which is the unjust or cruel exercise of authority or power. So we see this in the Bible, in the book of Exodus, when the children of Israel are being oppressed by the Egyptians. And then we also see this in today's world when we look at human trafficking. So, a couple of other important key terms to know is a minority group, which is a group that has a subordinate status and is subjected to discrimination. So an example of this could be a new immigrants that move to this country that don't necessarily know the language, and other people fear, that they're going to take over their community or whatever, but they're subject to discrimination because it's easy for them not to have the same opportunities as the other people because of their lack of knowing the English language and things like that. So, and then the last key term is social justice, which is an ideal condition in which all members of a society have the same basic rights, protection, opportunities, obligations, and social benefits. And then, lastly, a diverse group is groups with characteristics that are distinct from the dominant groups in society. So there are three main things that you can do to promote diverse groups. The first is to be aware of personal stereotypes and preconceptions. The second is to have knowledge about the diverse group he or she is working with and their special needs. And the last is to be aware of which intervention techniques are apt to be effective with that group. So if you're going to be, like, for example, if you're going to go to China to do a business trip, it's important to know, their methods of introduction and their manners and their hidden rules and things like that. And so now we're going to do an exercise just to warm you guys up and get you guys a little open. On the back of your handout, there's an exercise, exercise B. You can turn to that. I'll read it for you. It says, the United States has discovered in another galaxy a planet, future Earth, whose environment is very similar to Earth's. This is every indication that the planet will be able to support human life. Although no other human life has been detected on future Earth, the United States has just completed a spaceship that will be able to travel to future Earth. The spaceship is being built on a remote island in the Pacific Ocean and will hold a total of 7 people. Your subgroup is in frequent contact with chief scientists for this project. The spaceship is remarkable in that it has a new computer system and that it has already been programmed automatically to guide the spaceship to future Earth without requiring a pilot. Suddenly, a nuclear war breaks out between the world powers. It's New Year's Eve. Russia, China, the United States, and Israel are already launching their nuclear warheads. It looks like the nuclear destruction may eliminate human civilization on this planet. The chief scientist frantically calls. The spaceship must take off in 15 minutes to future Earth, or it will be destroyed. She and your subgroup believe that the 7 people who go may be the only people left to start the human race. There are 7 people at the spaceship. Your subgroup must decide who will be selected. If the 13 people themselves decide they are likely to become irrational and begin fighting, your subgroup has only 15 minutes to make a decision. If your decision is not made in 15 minutes, a nuclear warhead is apt to hit the island and destroy the spaceship. All you know about the 13 people is the following. The chief scientist is a female who is 47 years old. A Hispanic peasant, female, 4 months pregnant. There's an African American male, third-year medical student. There's a female prostitute, 27-year-old, and is a communist. There's a white male who is a homosexual as well as an athlete, and he's 24 years old. There's a white biology professor who is 67 years old, a rabbi who is 27 years old, a white female on public assistance, 28 years old, has been arrested for several felonies and has never been employed. There's a female home economist, 24 years old, white, has cerebral palsy. There's a Korean child, male, 8 years old, and there's a white male moderately retarded due to the lack of oxygen at birth. Retarded due to the lack of oxygen at birth, and he is 33 years old. And there's a white female elementary school teacher who is 27 years old and has genital herpes. A 28-year-old farmer who is white has had a vasectomy. So you guys are going to divide up into how many people? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12. So let's do 3 groups of 4, and you guys are going to pick the people that you have listed. You're going to pick 7 people out of the 13 listed, and we're going to give you 15 minutes to do so. After that, we're going to come back together and discuss why you chose those people.
Oh, to say. I was talking about 11, but he still can because it was about. Just tell me people you don't want I know. That's a good question. I don't think they do. I don't know. I don't write
Look, I can't remember which.
Oh, yeah. That should be. Okay, let's figure out. What about
They're easy to do with their heart. Justify. They know exactly.
Yeah, she can have a risk. Yeah. Or she just has to discuss it. She would be a great decision.
School teachers. Ladies.
Yeah, we'll probably need to know this just because they know about her relationship. Which is a case.
Social worker.
People who do resumes, human resources.
But also
He's still kicking. Yeah, he's not going to be there.
Hard loss.
How about that? I want to cross him out. Because we're still
But, hey, if she leaves, she's not prostitute.
You gotta make sure you keep it.
Then she's a 27-year-old zombie.
Make sure. Oh, no, we, yeah, man, don't worry. You might want to do celebrity.
Who?
Rabbis, did they get married?
Yeah.
Not the
Thank you. Yeah. Oh,
The soul could have been a wife.
I know, take
Which one?
We need to ask them questions. We need to be able to ask these people questions. Hey, obviously she has some kind of. We could like go right.
She'll kill off the population.
She's been arrested for several times.
So,
I don't know.
Okay, someone's gonna do it, we're running away.
Were we crossing that? Right now, or retired.
Your spaceship will be leaving in 5 minutes. So you know.
Oh my God. People going. We're locked in.
I think it's. Well, first of all, they have like.
You missed,
Wait, who else is running?
We got one. One.
yeah, we're also the ones, and you missed, but you're on.
How many people are going? How many of you have my?
Well, I thought about that too.
Wait, why would you mark that?
No, but he's going.
Oh.
It wasn't.
It was like, what did you get? Yeah.
But I mean, we still. But if you. I would imagine like,
So, yes.
why?
It's so hard.
I'm afraid for the.
I'm sorry you didn't want to do last year there was
Who? What if she killed somebody?
I think we should. I think we should.
Like, it says she
Yeah.
been arrested. It says she been arrested for felonies. What if she was a murderer?
She's creative.
A murder is a felony.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot of Okay,
Okay, your spaceship's leaving in 1 minute.
oh my gosh.
Wait, did you wait over 13?
Yeah.
Did you get number 13?
I don't know.
Farmer.
Because they played this.
Or relative.
I don't know what.
Rabbi and the farmer.
Oh, yeah, I didn't
I don't play any of them.
So
White man. He probably doesn't have to worry about it. Yeah, I'm done. If these two were involved. You think?
Wait, so
It's
15 or
also-
not being 15?
Okay, so yes.
Okay, so we have 7. Is that if you agree, I don't want to be in charge.
3, 2, 1.
we're all done. Yep, we're dead.
Last stop, spaceship's left.
We were done.
Okay, so we're gonna go through and see. How many people did you guys have selected?
We have 7.
7? Okay.
No, we're supposed to have?
Yeah.
Okay.
And who did you guys select?
You just want me to read the numbers?
Yeah.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 10.
Okay. And so is there like specific reasons as to why you chose those people?
We were crossing off people we think they shouldn't take.
Okay. So what were the reasons? Who did you select not to? Obviously.
We were most looking for people who would reproduce like willingly and pass on the best.
I guess, so that
Yeah.
they can keep on.
Yeah. So like the cerebral palsy, we were thinking we don't want that passed on. We're just against stuff like that.
Okay. What about you guys?
We picked 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10, and 13.
Okay. And were there any general reasons as to why you picked those individuals or why you didn't pick others?
Yeah, well, we figured the white female that's been arrested, never been employed, didn't want that. We figured, like, obviously if we picked a third-year medical student, like, if the homosexual, you can, like, obviously he can't reproduce, so you can use a sperm, you have a medical student, and then the vasectomy, it can be reversed, the medical student.
Yeah.
And he's a farmer, so if he doesn't, obviously if we can't, reverse the vasectomy, he can always help, with crops and stuff like that.
Does everybody know what a vasectomy is?
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay.
Oh.
I don't have to know, but it's okay. Okay. And you guys?
We did.
You asked a question?
No, it wasn't. Doesn't need an answer.
Okay, the ones that are going is 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, and 10.
Okay, and why did you guys choose them?
Well, scientists would be a good idea just because they'll like have an understanding once they get there, like what's kind of, I don't know, yeah, what they can do. The pregnant lady because it's already like another human that's going to be there after, and then the medical student so he can help with the baby, like, or birth the baby, and then just with like different health issues, and then the prostitute because, well, we said she would probably be willing to have more babies, like with. Which one is this? Number 8, the lady, the felonies lady, just she'd probably be like smart with manipulating different things. Number 9. I mean, like people with cerebral palsy can still reproduce, so yeah. And then the Korean child, because they're young and will be around for a while.
So, did anybody choose 12? Nobody chose 12? Nobody wanted an elementary school teacher?
She has herpes.
She has a disease.
Oh, so you guys were solely worried about reproduction?
Pretty much.
Okay, it's just curious. I'm not grilling you guys or anything. Okay, so that was just an exercise to, get you guys opened up and kind of talking to each other. Next, I believe Libby is going to talk about section 7.2.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about stereotypes and preconceptions. The book gives a list of 9 or 8 myths that people usually have about gay and lesbians. The first one is appearance and mannerisms. So we assume that we know someone's gay if they, if a guy kind of has a higher voice or the way he moves his hands or the way they dress. And vice versa, if girls dress more masculine, then we're automatically going to assume, or that's a stereotype for someone being lesbian. The second myth is gender identity. They think that because guys dress like girls, gay guys dress like girls, they want to be a girl, but that's not necessarily true. They just are more feminine, I guess, and so they dress more feminine, but they don't actually want to be a girl. They like being a guy, and vice versa with girls. And then the third myth is sexual roles. We assume that there's always a masculine. There's someone that plays a masculine role, and sometimes, a lot of times that's not necessarily true, but sometimes they swap, and so it's not consistent. It's so they do have that, but it's not necessarily one person plays that role. And then myth 4 is child molesters. Some parents are scared to send their kids to a class that the teacher is gay because they're afraid that they're gay or lesbian because they're afraid that they'll molest their children, which I didn't know that until this. And then myth 5 was they're either gay or they're straight, and this isn't necessarily true. Some people like guys and some people like girls, they like both, bisexual. And then Miss 6 is mental illness. Before, like back in the day, they thought that being gay was a mental illness. They've recently taken that out of the book, and so being gay isn't a mental illness anymore. And then Miss 7, they thought that AIDS originated from guys from gay guys because it spreads faster with them and it's more common in the gay community. But and recent studies have shown that gay guys are aware of this and are actually taking stands to try to avoid spreading AIDS. And so I think that's good. Myth 8 is sexual differences. So like people can choose what they want, like people can choose to like have intercourse with the same sex, but it's determined at a young age, and whether or not they choose, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are. But some people just kind of play around with that idea, but it's determined at a young age. And so this is just kind of some stereotypes that people have of gay and lesbians, and there's other stereotypes, and not all of them are negative. For example, like people say that Native or African Americans can dance, which that a lot of them can, but it's not like necessarily. It's not if you're black, you can't necessarily dance, and so that's a stereotype. And then also they say that the French are romantics. And then, and I guess, I don't know if that has to do with the French language. It's kind of romantic. But for some reason that is a stereotype. And so when I was thinking about this, I looked up a couple of scriptures, and Malachi 2:10 talks about how we're all, God created us all, we are His Father, and then the Psalms in Psalms 139, it talks about how we were fearfully and wonderfully made, and we should praise God for that. And then John 6:31 says that do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I just kind of thought of these because no one likes to be stereotyped and no one likes to be put in a box. And so I think that we should learn to take a step back and let people, individuals, tell their own story. And if you don't want to be put in a box and be stereotyped, then don't stereotype others. And like I said, God told us that we were fearfully and wonderfully made, and to doubt that in ourselves and doubt that in others is doubting God, and I don't think that's right. And then the next section is talking about knowledge about diverse groups. So social workers need to have knowledge, and they said that social workers need to be aware of setting their cultural standards or their culture and what they do in their culture as the standards. And so, for me, even in America, drinking is looked a lot more down upon than it is in other cultures. And then we have people on the soccer team who drinking with their family isn't a big deal, and so we tend to judge them for that. But in all reality, that it's really it's not a huge deal. That's just kind of what they do. And so that's something that social workers and professional helpers need to be aware of when they're helping others. And then one thing that helps in helping process, if someone has experienced the same thing that their client has, then they have the tools to be more empathetic and help them with their needs more if they've experienced it. But while this is true, you don't necessarily need to experience what your client is experiencing in order to be an effective helper. In the book, there's a quote that says, "I've come to the belief that it is not much of a question of whether the therapist is black or white, but whether he is compassionate, warm, and understanding." So again, this is just saying that you don't necessarily need to have those experiences, or you don't need to be in the same culture in order to be an effective helper. And then the book gives a list of some skills that effective helpers should have, and they should be good listeners. They should be able to build a relationship between the client and obviously a safe one, to where they don't feel unsafe. And then they need to be compliant and empathetic and be able to solve problems. And so be able to talk out problems and figure out how to solve their problem. Also, as a helper, it's important to know the hidden rules. If like someone from a different culture comes in, like you're helping someone, then you should do research on that. And so, not to offend them, or just so you know, like you can be more empathetic and relate to them on a deeper level. And the book gives an example of Native Americans supposedly they don't like to give eye contact to just like someone that's not in a respectable status. It's disrespectful to give just anyone eye contact, and so like if you're to give them eye contact, then that would be really offensive to them. And so that's just like an example of something that you would want to know if you were counseling a Native American. It talks about how the importance of family and the role like that plays in clients, and they said that it was really good. Obviously, you have like if you have godparents, then you have something to, like if something happens to your family or like your parents or your brothers and sisters, then you have godparents to fall back on. You have financial help, and then you also have like if you're close with your family, then you have the wisdom of your grandparents and your parents, so that they can help you kind of get these situations, and also you can learn from their mistakes and not necessarily have to learn the same mistakes that they learned, the same mistakes that they had to learn from. And then a bad thing about that, they said though, is like if someone is really close to their family, then they're less likely to like get involved in the community, because they already have their family, and like if something did happen to their family, because they had their family and they like relied on them, then they don't necessarily know their resources as well. And so okay, whatever. And then okay. And so then I had a video I was supposed to play after I talked about the myths of gays. This is just a video that kind of gives an example of the stereotypes, like in movies, of what a gay guy is. I forgot to play that after.
No.
I don't know if you guys have seen Just Go With It. It's from Just Go With It. What was it? We put it on the slideshow because we thought we wouldn't have to wait for it to load. Okay. I guess I'll just finish and then show it after. Okay, so then another thing that our society and the pictures still will load on that right now. And so one thing that our society has done is like they put a lot of emphasis on like good looks, and so like people associate, like in movies they associate good looking and having like good genes and stuff with being good, and then having disabilities and not being as good looking with evil. One thing this has done is it's made people with disabilities feel inferior to the people with like disabilities that they can't help. Yeah, so this is an example of like Harry Potter is like good looking, and then Voldemort is ugly, and so it's good and evil. And then the next one. This is just another example of good. And then there's a third example. And so, one thing that this does to our societies, like I was saying, is it makes people who were born like with disabilities that they can't necessarily help. It makes them feel inferior and less valuable. And then, so not only do the people that were born with these disabilities or not as blessed with as good looks have to not only struggle with like the fact that they're handicapped, but now what society is thinking of them. So now not only is it a physical battle, it's a psychological battle, and so it's having a bad effect on people today. And then the last thing I was going to talk about is between clients and the professional helper or social worker, it's important that that they are, and this is in the I forget how to say this, but then I forgot. It's in the reciprocity section. Anyways, it's the last section, and it's basically the idea that it's important to
Reciprocity?
yeah, reciprocity. I looked it up and I was going to say that, and I just forgot it right now. Anyway, so this is basically the idea that people need to, like clients and helper need to be able to communicate like their cultural values and their beliefs, because if they don't, then, like I was saying, they're not going to be able to be as effective as a helper. And the book gives an example of this lawyer helping this family out in court, and they were testifying for all this stuff, and then the lawyer's like, okay, I'm going to try to get, the son had club feet, and he's like, I'm going to try to get the court to also pay for the surgery so he fix club feet while I'm doing all this other stuff. And so